me?
What do I look like, a creature from the Black Lagoon? You are paranoid, kid. Listen, I'll race to the deep end.
Something bit me. Or there's something in here.
David! David! David? David! David!
What's up, rotters, and welcome back to Brain Rot, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the best, worst horror films of the 80s and 90s. I'm Stevie, your VHS veteran. Well, I've had a lovely week, let me tell you. The response to last week's Season 2 launch episode has been overwhelming, and I've had so many incredible messages and emails, so thank you to everyone who reached out. As always, I have a little bit of housekeeping before we crack on with today's Trashterpiece. Firstly, the Brain Rot Presents Friday the 13th event is this Friday in London. There's only a very small amount of tickets left, and so I've decided to throw a 20% discount on remaining tickets if you use the code JASON20. That's JASON20, all caps. The link to the event is below in the episode notes. So if you want to join us and have a few drinks and watch some trashy horror in a private cinema with us, then click below. Also, our Metal AF Brain Rot t-shirts are now printed and in stock. They're screen printed by hand, and they feature the incredible skull design by Greg Parsons from Last Shirt on the left. Just go to steviesbrainrot.com to get yours. They're just $15.99 and come in two colours, Cemetery Dirt and Infection. And lastly, I want to give a shout out to some of my new Brain Rot patrons. What's up, and thank you to Carl Andrews, Verena Reiber, Saw Tun, Colin Alexander, David Ziedler, Keith Bowman, Andrew Blakeman, Ray Winters, Beth Greaves, Verity Harrington. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. You're all legendary rotters. I've still got a few more to thank, and I'll be getting round to those next week. Now, to the trash. This week, I'm joined by writer, broadcast journalist, presenter and podcaster Louise Blain to discuss Joe Dante's Roger Corman-produced Trashterpiece Piranha from 1978. Yeah, I know it's not 80s or 90s, but we had such fun recording this episode that we decided to also delve into 1982's Piranha 2, The Spawning, James Cameron's first time in the director's chair, don't you know? That episode will be dropping this Thursday on Patreon. If you want to hear that and get access to a host of other bonus episodes and benefits, just head to patreon.com/Stevie's Brainrot. But for now, let's head back to 1978. Louise, hello. Welcome to Brain Rot.
Oh, I am so excited to be on Brain Rot, Stevie. I'm absurdly excited. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it was an absolute no-brainer because we've done something for your podcast not so long ago for Podworld.
Yes.
And so now just flipping it on you, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm ready to be. I'm ready to be grilled after grilling about Brain Rot. But yeah, it's lovely to be here.
I'm really glad. So, what have you been up to recently? I want to talk about your work, but what I want to ask you about most is this cocktail machine that I've seen that you've got on Instagram because it blew my mind.
Okay, so I, as well as writing and talking about horror and true crime and various other things, I obviously work across gaming and tech, and I do a weekly slot on Kay Adams' show and the morning show on BBC Radio Scotland, where I talk about tech and consumer tech and fun things. And for this, we decided to have an item on drinks technology. And you think, you automatically think of an espresso machine, you think of SodaStream. Haha. So I managed to find the DrinkWorks home bar.
It looks amazing.
Which is basically Nespresso for booze.
Yeah.
So it's made by the same company. When you go to America, it's not normally an espresso machine. It's usually made by a company called Keurig, who make those pods. It's basically mostly America uses these Keurig pods, and you get them at all the convenience stores and stuff. But here, it's mostly an espresso. But Keurig have brought out this exclusively through a website called Master of Malt, where obviously lots of people have probably bought their gin and stuff. But they have this home bar machine, and basically it has like giant pods, quite big pods, full of liquid, which have all the correct like tequila or gin.
All the measurements.
Or all of those. They've got the perfect measurements and the flavourings. You stick that in, and it's got a barcode on the back that reads exactly what type of drink it is, so it knows how much water to dispense through it.
What?
And it's got a carbonation thing in it, so it knows that if the cocktail should be carbonated, it carbonates it. And the tank has to chill to a perfect temperature. It wouldn't let you make a cocktail unless it's chilled the tank to the exact temperature. And then you just press the start button and it makes like a perfect cocktail.
And you've tested it. Did it work?
It's so good. I was so surprised. Honestly, Stevie, I thought this is going to be terrible. Like no one's going to want this. It made a really good margarita. Margarita. And then last night I had what did I have? Was it a Tom Collins? Is that right? The gin cocktail with the sort of basil infused sugar syrup. That was lovely too. And it was carbonated and delicious.
That sounds... Is it an expensive bit of kit though?
It's £400.
Yeah. And then the canisters?
Yeah, so they're like £16 for 4. So that's not cheap.
And is it one canister per drink?
Per drink, yeah. So it's maybe £4 a drink. It's expensive. It's a really... it's a silly toy. Really.
It's novelty, for sure. Yeah.
It's also huge. I don't know if you saw my Instagram story, but it's enormous. The footprint of it is enormous. So it's not going to be something, I assume I'm going to be sending this back, but it would not be something that, unless you had an enormous kitchen, it wouldn't exactly be something you'd have out all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll hone it though. It's one of those sort of things, like the microwave in the 40s, they were absolutely massive and they were only given to companies so they could mass produce things. And eventually it gets smaller and smaller and then it's cheaper and then it goes on to the public market. That sounds like it's a bit more prototype, but I'm sure eventually it'll literally be like a soda stream.
Yeah. Oh, I love my soda stream. It's sitting in front of my soda stream right now. I love it.
Oh, I'm obsessed with it.
Honestly, I don't drink other water. Why would I drink flat water? It's flat. No.
Right, absolutely. And then paying for bottled fizzy water is insane because you're paying for air.
Yeah.
You're paying for them to put carbon into it. It's just crazy.
Yeah. I'm very much a supporter of all soda stream things.
But from beverages to horror, there's not really a segue there, but I'll try. So horror, obviously you and I, we have kinship with that. But horror itself, what was your entry into that? How did that happen? What happened to you?
What happened to me? My poor parents, they looked after me so well. No, I think horror's entry point for me, I was I've always been a big reader. And I think when I was wee, I immediately was drawn to ghost stories and scary stories and Goosebumps and point horror and as many ghost story books as I could eat out of the library, basically. And I think, so that was probably my initial gateway was reading really scary ghost stories, because children's ghost stories are still scary. In fact, you can read I bought recently, I was on Adam's podcast talking about ghost stories, and for that I actually found one of the original books of ghost stories that I read as a child, and it was horrifying. There's some really scary stuff in there because no one really dresses it up for children. No one goes, oh, here's a boo ghost. It's really like horrible things in the night when you turn off your light. And I think that's what horror is. And I think so then from there, I ended up, my first sort of big memory of getting into horror movies was obviously I loved The Craft when that came out because my friend and I rented that. My mum had to rent it for us because it was a 15 and we were only 13 or whatever. Yeah. But I think my big memory was watching Scream. Someone brought the VHS we all used to hang about in the music department in high school, and someone brought the VHS in and we dragged in, that TV that was on wheels in school. So we dragged that in and we watched Scream. And it was genuinely this moment of being like, it's not just me that likes scary things, it's grown-ups. And grown-ups like scary things. And grown-ups make stuff like this. And I didn't even know what they were referencing in Scream. I had no idea.
Of course, all the previous films, yeah.
Totally. So it was kind of like I then learned in reverse. So I then did my homework for horror after I saw Scream.
That happened to a lot of people. Like another friend, Josh Tonks, I know that was his sort of catalyst was Scream, and then he went back and found all the films that they're referencing, and then broadened his spectrum of horror loving. And I think, but Scream just created an entire generation because of what it was, who it was aimed at, and obviously that new sort of slant, that meta postmodern, and it just fed the masses and created. Because I'm trying to think of other seminal films since then that have, I'm sure there are, but a lot of the teen sort of films that came after that didn't quite hit the mark. So I'm not sure. I'm thinking of amazing films like Hereditary, but that to me doesn't feel like, kids will be sneaking off school to go and see that and then being obsessed with horror. It's just, it really depends what generation you're from, I think.
I think what's interesting about that as well is I don't know so I watched the Fear Street series recently. And a lot of people really, really liked it. And I didn't think it didn't hit for me at all.
Same.
Because I felt like it was far too derivative of Scream.
Yeah.
Like it was just Scream. The opening I was so furious, in fact, because I heard the music of the title sequence. And I was like, I can't believe they've done this to Marco Beltrami. This is horrific. They did all that before. And then his name comes up. And
his name, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to have to wind my neck back in.
It's crazy, isn't it? But even down to, in the first one of the shots of the first kill, the way it goes into slow motion, like the Drew Barrymore kill from behind.
Exact, over the shoulder.
Oh,
yep.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a favourite sort of, obviously, there are so many subgenres, but we're going to be talking about creature features, actually. Are you a fan of creature features?
I'm a big fan of creature features.
I'm
a really big fan of creature features. I love found footage a lot. And I love supernatural horror. And I do like I like most types of horror. What I don't particularly enjoy is I don't enjoy home invasion movies. I find
Me neither.
Particularly vindictive and nasty. And I find something like Wolf Creek, for instance, really particularly nasty and vindictive not in a fun way. And I think that's really interesting as a horror fan, that you realize what kind of horror you like and what kind of horror feels safe.
Yes.
And what kind of horror, I mean, Hereditary is an unsafe movie, but I love it. But there's some movies that I know a lot of people love, and I almost understand why they do love them, but that's not why I love horror. So it's interesting to work out what feels like a fun genre and what feels like, oh, it's a bit much. Can't really do that.
I agree, especially with home invasion and things like that. Brutality, it's more of an endurance test, isn't it? I don't find it entertaining or titillating. It's a challenge, and not the sort of challenge that I like. And I'm absolutely obsessed with creature features, especially when nature attacks, real animals that attack, but only if they're balanced well, because I absolutely love scary shark films. One of my favorite horror films is a film called The Reef, because it is so realistic and it's done so well.
I love
The
The Reef.
All of the Reef, it's incredible. But all of the silly creature features like the Sharknadoes or Sharktopus or 12-headed shark attack, that I don't like that type of creature feature, because it's just so stupid and they don't lean into any of the horror. They don't try and scare you at all. They try and make you go, for fuck's sake. Yeah. But anything that takes the actual animal attack seriously. And it's funny because Piranha is quite different, because it's sort of the antithesis of Jaws in a way, because it's a Roger Corman produced film. So that means tiny budget and a tight schedule. And he always said, you only get a second take if the camera falls over. Like, he was that strict about the schedule for filming. He basically put this into pre-production the day Jaws hit the box office, and decided to do the opposite of, instead of having one giant set of Jaws, dangerous Jaws, to have several tiny ones in an attempt to try and avoid plagiarism lawsuits. Yes. And Universal actually began the process of stopping Piranha being released after it was done, but Steven Spielberg saw an early cut of it and he absolutely loved it, so that put a stop to that.
That'll do it.
Yeah. What are your general thoughts about Piranha? You hadn't seen it before, right?
No, I'd only seen the Alexandra Aja remix. I hadn't seen the original. I had a great time with Piranha. I loved so many. I mean, I love so many things about it, but I especially love that it's so referential. It is so meta. You know, she's playing the Jaws video game. I loved that moment. I loved it for various reasons. I loved it for the fact it was a video game, because I'm like, a video game in a movie. That's not saying it's terrible.
Of course.
And also the fact that it was the Jaws video game. The fact that they could slide in so many, like, we're being really referential. Look at all the cartoon fish we're putting on the screens. Look at all the silliness. But at the same time, like, there's some real nastiness amidst the sort of hilarity, and a really interesting, and I also think we'll probably talk about it later, some really interesting parallels, obviously with Jaws and obviously with COVID. I think there's sort of ecological discussions, but also let's open the beaches, let's have a lovely party on the lake, let's not wear masks. Wait, that's not what we're saying.
Yeah, I kind of almost forgot about that Jaws video game, and it's almost like they're putting it in there so blatantly so that they're going, look, we're aware of what we're doing, so therefore
we know it's
can't
here.
Get angry. We're not like hiding in any way that we're completely inspired. But it was, I think, something that really helps is that it was directed by Joe Dante, and something that he does is, I don't know anyone who blends humor and horror as well as him, such as, you know, the Gremlins or even the Howling. He has such a unique, and you can see it in this, you can see the beginning of what will become his style and his flavor. What are your thoughts on Joe Dante?
Well, that was exactly what I thought. I was like, I hadn't realized that he directed it. I knew there was an original Piranha, but I hadn't ever watched it. I hadn't read anything about it. But the minute his name appeared, you know exactly what it's going to be. But what's interesting is, obviously, because then I thought, oh, where did this come in his lineup? Where's this on his CV? And realizing that it was so far at the beginning, and suddenly you go, right, so you honed that, but you could always tell what was meant to be funny and what was actually meant to be scary. And there's some real ridiculousness in Piranha, which was just almost throwaway gags, like the weird little Godzilla that was kind of scuttling around in the lab. Like, I'm looking at that going, this is some weird Harryhausen style monsters, but it's just a throwaway gag. And you can so you can kind of see the fact that he's not afraid to put in something absolutely ludicrous. Just pop it in there. It was so much fun.
And I thought when I was watching it, that would have been something I remembered when I was a kid, but I didn't remember that at all. So I almost thought, have I put the wrong film on? Because I was
don't
like,
remember
what the hell? This sort of lizard piranha crossbreed experiment. And but when I looked into it, so Joe Dante did do that in an attempt to honor Ray Harryhausen, but apparently the original concept was that you see it peppered throughout the film, and it's bigger each time, to the point where at the very end,
I would have loved that so much.
You've got all these piranhas attacking people, but also a 15-foot, and it's coming up from both directions, like the ground and the water.
Oh, I kind of wish that had happened.
Me too.
I would have enjoyed watching a Godzilla like scoop up the people from the lake who have managed to get onto their inflatable.
Right.
Nom.
It's brilliant. And even so, our two leads that are sort of odd couple, Paul and Maggie, in it. Again, it's just such a bizarre choice, which I love it, because halfway through the film, it almost turns into a Starsky and Hutch type film with and sort of Romancing the Stone vibes as well. It's a brilliantly bizarre pairing. What did you think of those two?
She's utterly weirdly relentless. Like how she just arrives at his house. She's like, we're going investigating and you're going to drive me. And it's like, you're watching it going, this is just some odd behavior. Everyone is just engaging in that kind of odd behavior. We're like, why? And then the next scene is obviously a laugh because it's them on the road on the way up. And suddenly you're like, well, this is it. This is the ride that we're going on. But what I found really interesting was the fact that the movie, the problem is when you have a whole ton of piranhas, the tension, say Jurassic Park doesn't show you the dinosaurs for ages. And then by the time you see a nasty dinosaur, the tension is ranked straight up. And same with Jaws. But the minute that you start something eating with piranhas eating people, you're like, well, how do we go from here? But what it turned into was this kind of like crazy heist where they're breaking out of prison and they're knocking out guards. And I really loved one bit when he was like, distract him, and she's like, what if he's gay? And I'm going, that's the most progressive discussion to be having in a 1978 creature feature B movie is. And he's like, well, I'll distract him.
I'll distract him.
And it was just like this, and it just becomes this zany caper. But at the same time, what it manages to do by the end is steer it right back round to really nasty horror. And
Yeah.
it's almost like a little mini movie at the end, which is everything that takes place at the sort of lake resort, which is
Yeah.
fascinating because it holds you because you have no idea where it's going to go next because you know where it's been. So you're not sure where it's going to go.
To that fact, they also keep raising the stakes by adding another element because you think it's one thing and then it's, the introduction of a summer camp, the introduction of the brand newly opening water park, the introduction of the army descending upon them.
The really evil woman.
Yeah.
She is absolutely, she is nefarious.
Yeah. I think that just a bizarre performance she was really known for being in Black Sunday and Pit and the Pendulum and those older films. But she brings that style and it's so out of place in this film. Her portrayal and the way she holds herself and performs, it's from another era and it's just bizarre but brilliant.
Yeah. That's really interesting because she almost looks like she's lit in that era as well. Everything about her. Everything about her is this character that's just been lifted from, well, we want someone that's a bit like this.
Yeah.
And there was even small things about it where when they had obviously called the army and said, come and stop your killer piranhas before they're put through the dam. And they arrive and they toss in like the cow leg. And normally at that point in a movie, they toss in the cow leg and the cow leg wouldn't get eaten. You know,
right? That's the thing.
Normally it wouldn't get eaten, and they'd go, "You guys are making it up," and they'd open the dam. But what they actually did was what no one was expecting. Of, oh yeah, they've really attacked that. Now we need to do that. You know, we need to contain this. And suddenly you're like, I have no idea what this movie is going to do because structurally, it's not what I expect.
Doesn't stick to the mold of those bits that you're expecting. Yeah, you're completely right. And effects wise, so yeah, okay. It's basic. It's Roger Corman. It's basic, but it is effective. And but you had a team on there who were eventually to become titans and heavyweights of the FX world. So you had Rob Bottin, who of course did The Thing, just those incredible creations, The Thing and The Fog, and lots of Carpenter, and Phil Tippett, who became a 2-time Oscar winner, and he did Jurassic Park. But the thing is with Phil Tippett, he was a clay maker and he created things and did a lot of stop motion. You know, he was also inspired by Harryhausen. And the story with him, this is slightly off topic, but it's just because I watched a documentary on Jurassic Park recently. So he was originally hired to do the effects on Jurassic Park, and they were going to make the dinosaurs really cool stop motion. That was the original thought, you know, quite convincing, but it never quite works, and you can never get it completely smooth. And that's when suddenly, you can get the flow. And then suddenly, you know, the guys that introduced the CGI to it. And so he was basically, he'd put all this work in, and then he was told, we're going to go with the CGI and not your stuff. And so it was that. He said he felt extinct. That was his quote because of that. But then he just thought, right, get up. And if this is the way forward, I'm moving into CG. So then he started to help create how the motion would go on CG. And then he got 2 Oscars. But these guys are working on this tiny film Piranha, and it's so simple, but so effective. So, so first of all, can I ask for your synopsis? And then we'll just bash through some of the main plot points.
My synopsis. My synopsis is that an unlikely duo uncover a cluster of government-created murderous fish in a pool, unwittingly release this into the countryside, and then have to rescue everybody downriver.
Boom. That's it. I really enjoy that. You know, when they say, they're genetically modified. And of course, another thing, which again, I'm jumping ahead slightly, but when we find out that they were created to be basically part of the army in the Vietnam War to take people out. And since I've been doing this podcast, I can't believe how many films reference or in some way inspired by the Vietnam War. It blows my mind, which I didn't pick up on when I was a kid. But all of these films I'm visiting, there's always something about Vietnam in there, and it's coming off the back of that. But also when they say that they are genetically engineered, it kind of gives them a free pass. It's a really good little device, isn't it, to go, well, you can't ask any questions because they are genetically engineered. So
because magic, basically magic. We've just made them magic. Therefore, the exposition is not necessary.
Yes,
because we made them to murder everyone and that's what it is interesting that there's always that bubbling political tension sitting underneath horror. And I suppose, and I wouldn't I didn't see it in any films that I watched growing up because you don't reference them. It's kind of like when you read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe for the first time, and I wasn't religious at any point and didn't realize it was a Bible allegory. And now I read it and go, oh yeah, Aslan's Jesus. Okay. But you don't see that growing up.
Nah.
And you don't see, and I guess that's the joy of it, is the fact that you can enjoy it on that surface, but then at the same time, the filmmakers are making a very clear point of, the trauma of a generation, a trauma of a generation that can feed into these movies in a really sort of interesting, pivotal way that doesn't affect anyone that doesn't understand what they're watching.
Yeah, of course, because it is so generational. And a lot of the directors, or at least people close to them, fought in it. And so, of course, it's so close to home for a lot of these people. And so why wouldn't you make a statement in there? But the opening scene, right, of this, it's very confusing. There's this couple and they're sort of hiking in absolute pitch black, looking for somewhere to swim.
It's mad.
Understand.
It's really just an excuse for immediate boobs, really.
Yes,
that's all
absolutely.
it is. It's just
and
like,
there's no explanation.
No, nada. And also, it's weirdly green as well, the water. It's like, at no point would I climb over a steel fence to what looks like a sewer plant and go, this is a great place for a night swim. This is ideal. This is what we've been looking for.
Yeah, it's clearly like a reservoir of something.
Yeah, it looks horrible, and it's just like let's go for a swim in this. There's there's no stairs down to it. It doesn't say "swim in me."
They've literally looked at a sign that says "No trespassing."
Yeah, don't do it. Don't come in. And they literally get in.
Did you see that she sort of accidentally exposes her nether region when she's getting changed? So she's pulling off her jeans or whatever she's got to reveal her bathing suit, and the bathing suit at the bottom comes completely down, and she quickly pulls them back up.
Is that one take in action where she was probably can we shoot that again?
Why? What happened? Oh, my vag came out. No time for that.
Do you know, I probably didn't see that because I was probably writing in my notes in caps, which I can see here. You just wouldn't.
You just wouldn't. But thank God they did. I also really enjoyed his attack acting, because obviously the opening scene of Jaws, it's amazing because you've got the girl getting pulled left to right and then under, and obviously he's on his own in there, and they're like, can you just act like you're being attacked by Piranha? He's kind of jittering and just shaking in the water. It's fantastic.
I think the reference of Jaws to it, that it has to go in a slightly different direction, so you're I know it's going to be silly, so it kind of embraced that. And what I loved as well was after that had happened, she began swimming towards him.
She didn't get out.
The man surrounded by a giant cloud of blood that you could see had taken over the green. It was like, just leave. Just leave. Don't. No. Now you've made another bad choice. A series of unfortunate events.
She's sort of treading water as well, just sort of calling his name. It's like, get out and then have a look at that.
Then check.
Yeah. But Maggie, who we talked about a bit, but she's an investigator of missing persons, right? And so it's been less than 24 hours, and yet someone has managed to hire her and get her to Texas to look for these people who are on a planned hike.
Was it less than 24 hours?
Is it not the next? Oh no, maybe not.
I think I thought it was time. I thought time had gone by, and that's why she had been brought in, because...
Oh, right.
I think I assumed that time had gone by, and that's why she's kind of the last resort, was what I expected. But maybe it has. Maybe it was fast, because it's all just as ridiculous. Although, why we're trying to find logical sense when there's genetically modified piranha, I think...
So good though. And Paul, so he lives locally in this sort of woodland area, and he only consumes straight alcohol, just spirits. That's the only thing that goes into his body. But he is remarkably compos mentis and well functioning and balanced throughout this whole film.
Oh yes, he really is. I think they talked. What was his history? Had he moved out there? Because he'd had a family, and I didn't quite connect it.
So she says something like, how long after it did you start drinking? And he says, after what? She goes, the divorce, because it's really obvious. And he goes into a little bit of a monologue about his past, and it's something about he was working, and that took over. That's your lot, really.
That's him. That's why he's on the booze. Yeah, no cocktail bar machine though.
No, not yet. But yeah, so as you said, she's so sprightly and sassy that actually, as you were saying earlier, that she just convinces him because he says there's an secret off-map army testing base nearby. She's like, right, come on, we're going.
Let's
But
go.
she is one of those energies, and I know people like that you have no time to think when they're in your presence, that you do suddenly realize you are in a taxi on your way to Richmond when you should be in bed, and you're like, huh? And she is one of those people. Yeah. But they get there, obviously, we see the mutant lizard thing, which is just beautiful. We also find out that, about this Operation Razor Teeth, I think it was called, and the genetically engineered piranha to aid the Vietnam War. Yes. Yeah, normally, aren't they really coded?
Yeah. I mean, if you were making a secret, lab about piranha, you'd call it like Operation Fuzzy Features or something. Yeah. You'd make it the complete opposite. Like Operation Cuddly Teddy Bear. Yeah. Operation Pet Rabbit. Like it would not
Razor Teeth.
Razor Teeth is, they'll never know.
It might as well be Operation Killer Fish.
Yes.
They find a really convenient lever that says drain switch. Yes. And of course they pull it, so the piranha are now swarming the water system. One of my favourite moments in the entire film happens now. So we met him earlier, but this guy Jack, who seems to be like the liquor supplier, he's another sort of drunk guy. It seems people that live on their own here are just completely alcohol dependent. And he's sitting on the jetty with his dog, and it's some of the best drunk acting I've ever seen. He's talking absolute nonsense to the dog. Yep. It's fantastic. I was properly laughing.
My pup, he was in Baltimore with me. He was a good dog. And he walked right in front of a trolley car. And the trolley car, I'm telling you a story. The trolley car ran over his head. When you call loose your head over a little piece of tail. Pretty funny, huh?
I was enjoying the dog's acting as well. I always think when a dog is on screen for that length of time, I'm always like, what a good dog. And then I'm thinking like what people are doing off screen to make the dog continue to do that. So whenever people are talking to dogs, I inevitably get completely distracted. And the fact that he was talking complete nonsense meant that I was basically the human equivalent of that We Rate Dogs Twitter account being like 14 out of 10. Would look at this dog on a dock again.
I know what you mean. I do that with babies and with dogs. You always find yourself looking at their eye line and you get distracted by it. By going, I wonder what it is that's keeping them there, and what someone is doing behind the camera to make them stay in place.
My first thought I was like, oh, how are they doing that?
Yeah. But he gets attacked by the piranha and they attack his legs. And so for these kind of attacks where we see the piranha sort of on someone's skin underwater, back and forth. So they literally had these rubber piranha these were the ones designed by Rob Bottin, and actually in still photographs, they're absolutely amazing and so detailed. And they look fantastic, but we never actually see one properly because of the way it had to be filmed. Yeah. And so they had these rubber piranha on sticks. So they had sticks sort of on the tail, and it had a lever at the end, like, those kids' souvenirs that you get at the zoo.
Shark teeth. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. With a dinosaur or a shark or a lion at the top. And they had this lever so that they literally were based on that. And then that would make the mouths open and close.
That's amazing.
But it was an absolute nightmare to edit because the sticks were so clearly visible. And so they had to do lots of rapid cutting of the shots to get the effect that they wanted, and cut whenever there was a stick in shot, and sometimes you even had to just blow the footage up really big so that you just got a bit of the piranha. And the whole underwater element of this was new to absolutely everyone, and because none of them had ever filmed underwater, so it was such a struggle. They hadn't agreed a way to communicate. So they'd literally just go under and go, people wouldn't know that that cut had been yelled. And so it was a real learning curve for everyone, I think. But they do really well. What were they came up with this? It's the frenzied attack.
I think it works. I think it constantly works. And I love the noise that they make. There's this kind of like high-pitched attack noise that's constantly happening. So between that and the sort of the blood and then the fast cuts to on top of the water and then back to them, and that's all those, it's quite oppressive. And it is, again, there's nothing slow about it. It's fast, it's frenzied, it's completely over the top, and you begin to get quite stressed by it. It is a stressful thing to watch. You know, you can go, oh, that's quite funny, but no, actually, it happens for so long as well. They really prolong the attacks, which actually makes them cleverly much more stressful than it would be. Oh, it's just happened, and then a cut, but because it keeps going. And I actually think the piranhas themselves, like, I think fish look pretty weird anyway. I don't think fish look realistic. I don't look at fish and I look at fish and go, that looks like a complete alien.
What are you?
I remember one of the scariest things I saw. I was in a San Francisco like city aquarium zoo type thing, and it had this enormous round fish with like bulging eyes, and it was one of the scariest things I've ever seen. It had its mouth consistently open in this just like maw, and I was genuinely looking at it going, you're a monster, you're actually a sea monster, and I find you deeply unsettling. So I don't think, unless fake piranhas look really, really fake, I genuinely think they look weird enough to be real, which is nice.
You're completely right. I completely agree with that. They are like aliens. And I do have a fear of the water if I can't see the bottom. And I'm sure it is influenced by these sort of films that I used to watch when I was a kid. I'm absolutely sure of that. But also it makes sense. You know, it's not a phobia because a phobia is irrational. It's completely rational because it's a different world that we don't know. And obviously the lower and lower you go, the fucking creatures down there are absolutely mental.
Yeah, the ones that like fish, the angler fish that literally have those wee dangly bits to literally bring things in to just
glass teeth
to eat them. But I think that fear of not seeing the bottom of somewhere is the same fear that we have when we're in the dark and we can't see what's hiding at the bottom of our bed. And we can't, because as humans, we fear the unknown. And I went paddling in the west coast of Scotland on Saturday, and it was wonderful because it was crystal clear and I could see the bottom. I could see the sand with every single step that I took, because 2 weeks before I'd seen this colossal barbed jellyfish on the beach. And I was like, well, I'm not going to stand on one of those. And it didn't need a horror film for me to know that there are horrible things with horrible barbs and horrible spikes just sitting there on the sand.
Completely.
So I think that's why these creature features, if they're made well and they're not, as you say, Sharknado or Megalus, whatever, because actually the things that are in the water are kind of already bad enough. And you only need to crank the realism slightly further into the realms of imagination to go, oh, this is horrible.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah, so sharks and clowns are probably my actual phobia, my actual fears, my two proper fears in life. Clowns is I don't say it is irrational. So I'll tell you what happened. My trauma as a kid. This is off topic again, but hey,
no, do it.
I was with my friend's family for the day, and we were going to the circus. Classic. That's where all phobias and nightmares begin. True. And we were it was a proper old school circus, so you sat in a big sort of tent all around the sides, and then they had the show with lions. I remember there was lions. God, you don't get that anymore.
I saw one with elephants in it a long time
really
ago. Yeah, it was really sad. Now I think about it, awful. And monkeys. Really,
they had monkeys
terrible.
in this one.
Yeah,
there was. It was mental. And then they have the clown bit where they all come in the car, and 12 of them get out. And one clown pointed into the audience, and I was like, "That's me." He's pointing at me. He's pointing at me, and it felt like everyone went quiet. They obviously didn't. And so he slowly walked over to me and put his hand out for me to take his hand.
Oh.
But as he did it, he stood in front of the sort of spotlight that was down, so he became just a silhouette in front of me, and so I could just see his silly hat and a sort of flower sticking out of it, and the bizarre clothes. And as he leant forward, his face just caught a bit of light. So as he was a few inches from my face, his face just came into light, and I passed out.
Wow,
and that was it. And so now I'm truly terrified. But the thing is, I love films like It and any sort of, and the way I do shark films, I love watching shark films because they truly scare me. Yes. But it's not an actual threat. Whereas if a mate dressed up as a clown as a joke to scare me, it's not funny. Like it's actually upsetting, and my reaction, they will immediately realize we shouldn't have done that. So it's a true phobia, and it's one of those things. How did I even get onto this? But it is about that thing of something real.
Yes.
And that's what's fascinating and scary in the way such as piranhas.
That reality is really interesting. So I completely understand that kind of fear where you go, no, this was a terrible idea. This isn't funny. There's nothing funny about this. Or wouldn't it be funny if, and then the person would laugh. And that's not the kind of fear you have. I am terrified of, those real live horror experiences that you go on. I hate them. I hate them. I'm genuinely petrified of them. And it's because of how many films I've seen and where I'm safe. And the minute I walk into somewhere where it is dark everywhere and I know that someone is about to jump out and scare me, I have already imagined every single permutation of what that future can be where I would die.
Right.
It doesn't matter if Winnie the Pooh jumped out of the dark. I would still probably have a heart attack.
Right.
Because by that point, someone scaring me in a fake manner, I don't find appealing in the slightest. And people are always like, "You love this because you love horror films." And I'm like,
right.
No, this is exactly why I can't do this. And I've been forced for various work reasons to do like a zombie shopping mall experience, which was just scary, and to do all kinds of like live action stuff because everyone goes, "Isn't this brilliant?" And I think no, because I have seen all the ways that this ends, and it's all awful.
Yes.
I don't care if you tell me I'm safe.
Yeah, and also walking into one of those places, you are openly resigning to the fact that I am in here and people's sole objective is to scare me. So immediately your entire body and psyche goes into a different place.
Total panic mode.
Yeah.
And it's irrational. And I understand it's irrational because it's fake, but I feel far more fun fear, genuine scare fear from watching something like Paranormal Activity. But then put me into a Paranormal Activity experience in Universal's House of Horrors, and that would no.
Right. No, I'm with you on that. Although the thing is, I mean, mine isn't as bad because I still do enjoy it, but it's true terror. It's actual fear, not exciting fear. It's worried for your life.
You okay? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But this film, this is when they keep adding the elements. As I said, like you get the army and you've got the summer camp, which is all these handy things that could go terribly wrong. And Paul's daughter is currently at the summer camp. Yeah. She's a strange child, kind of creeped me out.
She's a little bit Children of the Corn, isn't she?
Yes, that's exactly.
She's this adorable little blonde girl who doesn't really like she's quite ethereal. I think she's quite ethereal and quite disconnected, but clearly not in an unpleasant way because all the camp counselors love her.
Yes.
So you get this clear message of like she just doesn't want to do that thing and that's not what she wants to do and she's afraid of that. And I think she comes across very sweet, but she's not your standard movie child who's all sort of sweetness and light and just wonderful and heroic. But actually I really like her journey of like, I'm not going swimming. I'm going to literally hide under this boat. But then she drags a boat down when the piranhas arrive, and she's a bloody hero.
Yeah,
and she's this legend. But I actually quite liked her because again, there would have been a set predictable child to put there, but actually they went for a very different and actually characterful approach to her.
You're completely right. Yeah, very characterful and. Yeah, I suppose she does kind of save the day in the end. I think I've skipped over actually one of the most awesome sequences where they have the raft, which is made of all the logs.
It's so good. And genuinely, it's such a set piece because the logs are going one by one. They're gnawing at the ropes one by one, but the land is not getting any closer. And they're sort of walking backwards in this kind of like comedy moment where you're actually like, no, someone's going to literally become a geyser of blood if they fall down. I loved that sequence.
It's so good. And that one, they had trouble doing the effects for that the same way. So they came up, which is really simple, but it took them a really long time to suddenly go, oh, I know. Why don't we put the sticks in the mouth? So they put the sticks in the mouth of the piranha, and then there were people above, so sort of pulling the piranha up so that you could see the bottom of them this time.
Okay.
And but
that works really well.
It was like they just like, oh, how can we do it? And they couldn't think of it until someone just went, just take the stick off the tail, stick it in the mouth.
Do it the other.
It's really effective.
It is. And the idea of the piranhas knowing enough to gnaw the ropes.
that's the
nice.
other thing.
It's like, quick guys, gnaw the ropes.
And as you were saying earlier, like the attacks, it goes on for a really long time. And this sequence is really long. And what you see one by one, them gnaw through the rope on one log, and you see that one roll away. Then the next log, until it's like there's 8 logs, and you see this thing repetitively happen, knowing that they're all going to be on one log by the end.
What's scarier than genetically modified piranha? Genetically modified piranha that know how to gnaw ropes. It's basically the velociraptors opening the doors. It's basically that, when you realise they can communicate and they're hungry.
Yes. And I do like the whole summer camp thing where, well, I mean, you've got all these kids sort of taking part in Native American appropriation, and but then they're all in the rings, the floating rings. And this bit was actually surprising because we actually see kids getting attacked and eaten.
Yes, really scary. And
Yeah.
it totally it rewrites the rules again, because you're like, well, it's fine if it's teenagers and 20 somethings, or yes, teenagers like this, because they're all clearly over 20.
Yes.
But genuinely watching children suffer in a prolonged attack. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, you're really
Yeah.
going for this.
Yeah, it goes there. It's kind of a no-go area, isn't it? Well, depending where you want, how successful you want it to be, or the rating you want. But I really enjoyed that. We also get one piranha, which is maybe foreshadowing of the second film, that jumps out of the water and attacks the guy's face.
The guy's face, he deserved that. Absolutely deserved
he's
that.
He's an ass.
He really is.
Now, probably the best shot, in my opinion, what did you think of it? So Betsy, who's one of the really nice counselors, her death underwater, and it's the shot of her getting dragged backwards into a cloud of blood with piranha all over her.
Yep, that was incredible. And I did not expect it, because obviously she'd been built as a character. They'd done a really good job of introducing us to a number of lovely people. And then to do that, I suppose they couldn't really have done that with a child. While it was kind of, maybe they've got a set of rules that they can go, well, we can show children being attacked, but let's not show them being dragged into the abyss. But that was a properly jarring moment of like, okay, wow. So that's what we're doing now with people. And then there was the shot after it. And I think it was just all the children and all the people with like sheets over them. And just that was horrible.
Yes.
Genuinely going from the moment of panic to here's the aftermath.
The aftermath, yeah.
And showing it like that and having that wee girl, see it all. That was
and just like
quite
bloodied
something.
Legs sticking out from under sheets and stuff. Yeah. But it's great. That shot, just there's something really chilling about it. I think maybe for me as well, because it's someone being pulled into the darkness of the ocean or the water, which is one of my greatest fears. But of course, being 1978, it was awful the way they did it, because they gaffer taped rubber piranha to her. I keep saying piranhas, but piranha is singular and...
I think so.
I've
probably been saying piranhas.
No, I don't know. But they gaffer taped the rubber piranha to her, and then literally tied a massive rope around her waist, and had a handful of people out of shot, down under the water, all just tugging her backwards. And it took a long time keep trying to get... Yeah, it's awful. And I'm sure she had marks, but also... in the blazing heat, so between takes and stuff, and she was sitting around maybe at lunch with these piranhas still gaffered to her because it was easier to keep them on. And because of the blazing heat, it kind of melted the adhesive on the gaffer and melded with her skin. And so when it came time to take it off, she was just blistered and red and lumpy for about a week, she said.
Oh, imagine being scarred by rubber piranha.
Yeah, right.
Of all the things, what's that scar? Ah, yes, that's the summer I spent in a lake having rubber piranha taped to my body, all in the name of B-movie art.
Right, that's the thing. Oh, goodness. But to be honest, I mean, I'm glad she's fine. She survived and she hasn't got actual permanent scarring. But I love that it happened, because we've got stories like that to hear of how they used to make movies and how there wasn't someone going, I'm sorry, I'm from the union, you can't do that.
You can't do that.
You just get on with it, didn't you? Right, take it, go, done. Then the resort. Now, this is interesting. I'm not too clear what this resort is, though. Is it a water park? Is it a farm? There's pigs and water skiing.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. It was just like a kind of dream resort for people, for him to wear his ridiculous suit. And also, I would like to say that I would love to be followed by someone who just has my mobile phone in a suitcase.
Oh my God, his
just
assistant.
For me to answer. I would like someone to approach me and open the suitcase and say, "Your iPhone, Miss Blain," and I would say, "Thank you," and I would answer, and then I would put it back when it stopped ringing. That is my dream.
It's wonderful.
It was joyous, the most ludicrous thing.
Of course, because it had to be plugged in somewhere as well, because it's a receiver phone. So where is it? Where's the power coming from? What's it connected to? It's just one of those little things, isn't it? That they put in and go, this is a niche, funny little thing. I enjoyed watching when the piranha attack all the guests at this newly opened. Also, that's a comment as well, having sort of big business owner, his plans thwarted to make $1 million. It's one of those, and keep it stum about the piranha, hopefully, because they got paying guests. But I enjoyed watching all the extras in this bit. Their versions of acting like they're being attacked by piranha. They were all completely different.
Yes, very, very different.
You had the tremble, you had the dunk. It's just really interesting because obviously the general sort of direction for that was right. So everyone, you're all getting bitten by piranhas. Go, and then everyone has their own version.
There was some very Aja-esque moments as well that I thought he'd brought in, but actually were clearly a part of it. There was one girl who clearly had both nipples eaten by piranha.
I didn't see that.
There was definitely some like nipples and teeth things happening because it was
Really?
like, there's a reason I'm seeing this, and I'm just like literally grabbing myself going, this is nasty. But the whole I love the whole water skiing sequence.
Oh yes,
because
of course.
he's like, there's a corpse, and they're like, oh, he wants you to go faster. And it's like, of course, that's definitely what he means. Like,
Yes, that's
also, the weird, let's do an explosive speedboat crash that was completely unnecessary.
Mhm.
It was just like, this is how we up the ante. We had piranhas to start with. Now we have explosions on the water and corpses and
Completely.
piranha.
Yeah,
It
that
was completely
climax.
unnecessary.
It's so ridiculous. I get that was Roger Corman who was like, we need like an explosion.
We need a boom.
And, yeah, exactly. And also the logistics of that and the physics of it don't make any sense of how both boats just explode upon impact. It's fantastic. But yeah, of course, they just ramp it up and they're really chucking everything in at this point. And I don't know if I completely understood Paul's plan to poison the water.
No, I hoped you would. I didn't.
No. I was so confused. They had this quick conversation and then suddenly a plan was formed and I was like, hey, whoa, hang on. What's the plan? And I knew it was something to do with poisoning the water. So I don't understand what he's swimming underwater to get to this pipe, to open it, to release sort of
the stuff that had been built up there, was what he said. And he'd apparently managed to make most of the piranha like follow him. Was that part of the principle? Because not all of the piranha got killed, clearly.
No.
So it was just a kind of vague plan to kill most of them.
Mm-hmm, right.
With some poison that was apparently somehow in the water system that was a great idea to put in the lake, but all the people were fine and he was fine.
Right. Yes, there's that as well.
Yeah.
It's convenient.
After
but
him being attacked underwater for ages, during which point we would definitely have died.
Completely. And also the amount of time he was under that water, because he's also attached to a rope, which is attached to a speedboat with Maggie in it.
When he was then pulled through a window underwater.
Yes. It's wonderful. And that kind of, that's it. But we see the piranha of obviously spread to the ocean, I think.
Yeah.
But the very end shot is just, again, what a choice. The Barbara Steele moment.
That last shot, but just before that as well, we've got another aftermath shot of all of the people just in bits. And the wee girl,
really? I don't really remember.
The wee girl walking through it to her dad with some water while he looked on with like this dead-eyed stare.
Trauma.
It wasn't a happily ever after. Like, he might have lived, but she looked genuinely upset. That wee girl looked like she was crying as she was going through.
Oh, she was, you're right.
And it didn't feel nice. It felt awful because it was like, this isn't a happily ever after. This is horrific. Like, he's sort of trembling and gazing out, and you're like, this isn't good.
Yeah, with cuts all over his face. And also, you're not, at that point, you're not seeing a child actor, you're seeing a child crying.
Yeah, you're seeing a child upset, child really upset amidst corpses. And you're like, well, what was kind of fun a minute ago, I kind of feel a bit guilty about now. Yeah. And I mean, at least her dad's okay, but I think he's going to go, I mean, he's going to want to have a drink because this is all terrible.
Yes, of course. Oh, goodness. Yeah, it's not a very happy ending, but obviously leaves it open to the sequel. But yeah, this bizarre moment where the Dr. Barbara Steele, the English sort of evil character, she breaks the fourth wall.
Yes.
And literally looks at the camera and goes, now there's nothing left to fear. And that's it. And it goes, and it freezes on her evil eyes.
Amazing. She was amazing. But I do think it was a really interesting way to finish it. Because they tried to go for sort of general victories after the sort of survival, stories of survival.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that didn't end with it. It was, most horror films actually end quite happily, but then always suggests that there's going to be future horror. So they kind of suggest that as an afterthought. But it was more like she had just set Piranha on the world.
Yes.
And that was it. And everyone was scarred and everyone was sad and children were crying and people were dead. And now the credits are rolling. Enjoy.
Yeah, that's the thing. And she seems to be happy about that.
Oh, yeah,
'cause
she's
she's
over
got
the moon.
menace. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's the end game for her? To wipe out the human? I don't understand what she wants.
Yeah. All she needed was a cat to stroke.
Yes, absolutely. Because yeah, sure, they were making them to be bio weapons, but they weren't controllable.
No.
It's not like they had some sort of something implanted in them where they could remote control them. So I don't know what her end game there is. They are loose on the world.
Ecological disaster.
Yeah.
She loves an ecological disaster. Yeah.
But that is Piranha. And we will say now that we have decided we will be doing Piranha 2 The Spawning over on Patreon, won't we?
Yes, we will. I can't wait.
Now, so you didn't realise Joe Dante directed this. So Piranha 2 The Spawning is the first, I think it's the first or maybe the second film, by James Cameron.
I am so ready for this. I
Can you believe
cannot
that?
wait to watch this. This is going to be wonderful.
Yeah, so they spawn wings and can also fly in that one. And that's a James Cameron film.
That's why we're going to Patreon.
Yes, absolutely. But is there anything else you want to say about Piranha? Thank you for watching it, because sometimes I feel like I have to apologise, but with this one, it really is so well pitched, and that's because of the people working on it and helming it. That it's just an absolute hoot.
Yeah, it's a joy. I did not feel like, I mean, honestly, the other movies that you'd kind of offered, I'd looked them up and was like, I would happily watch all of these. You know,
Yeah.
these are all great. Because I think there's something really enjoyable about having an excuse to watch movies like that.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you feel like you load up Amazon or Shudder or something and you feel like you should be watching the newest or the scariest or the artsiest, and suddenly you don't want that. You actually want something that is classic and fun and silly and also scary. And I think that's exactly what Piranha manages to do. And then I'm going to rewatch the Piranha 3D because I love that movie.
Yes, it's great. There was also another remake which was produced by Roger Corman in 2005, which I haven't seen, but apparently it was very much made for TV remake.
Okay.
And I think it needed the time between this and the Aja one. They didn't need a little sort of that middle sort of CGI era. So yeah, it's such a fun movie, and I'm so glad. Thank you for joining me to talk about that.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
And and I will see you on Patreon to talk about The Spawning.
See you there, Stevie.
And we out. A huge thank you to the amazing Louise Blain. I had so much fun recording that. So much so, we immediately did it again. Our episode on James Cameron's Piranha 2 will be streaming this Thursday at patreon.com/Stevie's Brainrot. If you'd like to get in touch and keep up to date with all things Brainrot, it's Stevie's Brainrot on Twitter and Letterboxd, BrainrotPod on Instagram and Facebook. You can email me, that's steviesbrainrot@gmail.com, and if you want to check out our awesome new merch, go to steviesbrainrot.com. Next week, Tori Allen Martin will be returning to the show. Last season, we covered the incredible Chopping Mall, and that episode is easily one of my favourites to date. This time, we'll be delving into the stupid and baffling Microwave Massacre, released in 1983. So check it out. I think it's only about 70 minutes, but it's 70 minutes of utter nonsensical garbage. J'adore. See you then. Toodles.